Welcome to the HuntFishTravel podcast, the first and longest running female hosted hunting podcast. Even though she's been living in a tent in a compulsive need to cook over an open fire and sleep on an air mattress, she's ready to help you navigate your trip of a lifetime. And now, here's your hostess, Carrie Zilka.
Welcome to the HuntFishTravel podcast. I am your hostess, Carrie Z. I actually recorded this episode a while ago, but I was holding on to it until this week. I just got back 2 days ago from Ireland. My boyfriend Aaron and I spent 10 days with some of my closest friends in Dublin, Cork, and Galway. Originally, we went a few days early to go fishing, but because nothing is ever simple, that was a fiasco. Trent Marsh from Spy Point and his wife were two in our group, and we'll be giving you the rundown on the Irish fishing trip that never was, the trip itself, and some exciting Spy Point news next week, so stay tuned for that. And speaking of Spy Point, the HuntFishTravel podcast has partnered with them to bring you all sorts of fun tips, tricks, and the latest news in trail cameras. This episode is also brought to you by Montana Decoy. I literally won't use any other decoys. They fold up and fit in my pack, and that is fantastic. Now, business done, on to hunting deer in Ireland. Super excited, as always, to have this guest on my show, because this week we're talking to Tommy from Tommy's Outdoors. If you don't subscribe to his podcast, shame on you. Pick up your phone, drop what you're doing, go to Podkicker, Stitcher, iTunes, whatever it is, and look for Tommy's Outdoors, because this guy is one of my favorite podcasters. No joke. And he graciously accepted the invitation to come on the show to talk about Sika deer in Ireland, hunting Sika deer in Ireland. Like, who hunts Sika deer in Ireland? This is going to be such a fun episode. Tommy, welcome back.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Carrie. And that's great to be back on your show. I can say the same thing about your show. You know, like people, you're listening maybe for the first time and you want to like subscribe to HuntFishTravel podcast. You know, it's awesome. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, and listeners might remember you from episode 195, and if not, go back. We talk about Shark Week in Ireland, and that was a really cool episode. That was a fun episode.
Shark fishing.
I know. But now we're going to talk about land hunting with Sika deer.
Yeah. So,
have you been hunting for Sika deer in Ireland, I'm assuming?
Yes, and it's maybe let's start about just to lay out for your listeners landscape, how it looks like. We have at the moment 3 species of deer in Ireland, and we used to had like a big massive deer called Irish elk. I suppose that was the common name, but it's extinct. So right now we have 3 species of deer. One is red deer, which is considered to be native deer. And then we have 2 introduced species, which is fallow deer and Sika deer. And so they're non-native, right? So and the reason I want to focus on Sika deer, because we spoke about it a little bit before the podcast, and we said, okay, let's figure out the species and location, and so maybe why I think that it's interesting to talk about Sika deer rather than the red deer, which is native, or fallow deer. And I think it's because, first of all, you guys in the United States have an opportunity to hunt Sika deer in state of Maryland. There is apparently some pockets where in Maryland where Sika deer lives, and they're called ghost of the marsh because they kind of feel at home in a kind of marsh, swampy territory. And it's also quite interesting to have that species in Ireland because it's totally introduced. The Sika deer is indigenous to Eastern Asia and Japanese islands. And just by the way, Sika in Japanese means deer. So when we saying Sika deer, it's like deer, really, right? So just remember that. And so in total, there's 14 subspecies of that deer. And out of these 14 subspecies, 6 of them are native and lives in Japanese islands, and in particular in Kyushu Island in Japan. And how those Japanese native deer differs from other subspecies that when they grow antlers, they have a black velvet on their antlers, while other species have usually red velvet on the antlers, and there are some other differences in coloration. So that's not a big deer. It's about 3 feet on the shoulder height. And stags are grow up to around 140 pounds. Hinds are about 100 pounds. They have a chestnut colored coat, summer coat with white spots. They're very, very beautiful looking deer. And then around September, they're starting to changing a coat from summer to winter coat, which is like a gray, almost black. So that's maybe, how we lay it out, how the species looks like. So they're not the big deer. And there are crepuscular animals, meaning they're usually feed and they're most active in the twilight, like hour before sunset, hour after sunset, and so on. And which obviously, when we're talking about hunting, poses some challenges, especially that when they're pressurized, whether by hunting pressure or agriculture, they may become entirely nocturnal, right? So then you essentially don't have a legal light. In Ireland, legal light starts hour before sunrise and ends hour before sunset. So effectively, you have 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening when you have a chance for getting those deer. So that's how maybe that's an introduction as for what we're talking about, the species.
That is interesting. And you're right. The only place you can hunt them, like on public land, other than going to some game farms in Texas or something like that, is Maryland. I think that's fascinating. I guess I didn't even realize that we had them here in the States. Because like you said, like I've always heard about people going to Asia to hunt them. So very interesting.
Yeah. So they can also come to Ireland to hunt them.
Yeah, apparently. Well, okay, so let's step back a little bit and just talk about hunting in Ireland in general. Because some countries don't even allow archery. Does Ireland allow bow hunting and gun hunting?
No, not at all. Okay. So this is like, as far as I can gather, there's very few countries in Europe that allows bow hunting. I know that some regions of France allow bow hunting. Some regions of, I guess, Belgium or Netherlands allows bow hunting. And, in fairness, when I got into hunting, I was watching all the videos, and obviously, majority of hunting stuff is you get from the United States. I was like, oh, great, bow hunting. And because my background as a sportsman is angler, I was angling, and so to me, like a bow is looks like is closer to a fishing rod. So I want to go bow hunting. And then I said, I won't have to go through all the hassle of getting permission for the firearm and so on, because Ireland is one of the countries with the most strict rules when it comes to owning a gun. It's very strict. So I wasn't going to go any of that. I just going to go bow hunting. And then, ta-da, surprise, you can't bow hunt. It's apparently considered to be inhumane or in most of the Europe, which is strange because on one hand you cannot hunt animals with a bow. On the other hand, you can hunt running animals, though all those driven hunts and so on. So that's okay.
Yeah. So
so maybe I'm not gonna go into that discussion. When it comes to hunting in Ireland, you essentially hunting him with firearm. You have a limit of the minimum caliber that you can use, and it's actually expressed in a muzzle energy, I guess. But in fairness, the lowest caliber is 22 to 50. But I think that regulation will change, or in reality, 243 is the minimum caliber that is recommended for hunting those deer, and I guess that makes sense.
Interesting, very interesting. So if you're a bow hunter, too bad. Got to keep it. Are there places where, like, say I wanted to come and hunt Sika deer in Ireland and I didn't want to deal with the hassle of checking my gun and everything? Are there places that you could rent a gun, do you think?
Yeah, there are a few places that are running kind of like an outfitting business. When you just need to you really need to ask them. You usually need to get a firearm license or like a for the visitor, and the price for that is around 50 to 150 euros. So this is like it should be inside $200. I looked at it some time ago. Haven't followed since, but I guess it depends, and there is, as far as I know, there's no like established type of businesses that are doing this. But definitely there's a lot of people coming to Ireland hunting. So I guess if you can do the quick Google and contact outfitters, they're gonna sort you out. So that should be.
And can you hunt them on public land, or do you have to go through an outfitter?
There is no such thing as public land. I think in majority of Europe. That was interesting conversation because we said once that like founding fathers in America, they try to do everything that is not like in Europe.
Right.
So that's why you guys have a public land, and I can't stress enough how awesome thing that is that you have public lands and really you go and do and protect the public lands. Yeah. There's no public lands, and I think it's historical. Because kind of like a history of Europe is much longer, obviously. And, there was always, the land always belonged to someone. There was always a king and duke or someone, right? And so for the longest time, hunting privilege was only a privilege for really, top people like kings and all these, noble people, I would say. And just the regular folks, they couldn't hunt. The story of Robin Hood, right? There was there's a permanent story of poaching, because those people were not allowed to kill anything because it was all owned by a king or whoever was owning the land. So there was no situation to coming to like a modern time that there were pieces of land that were not belong to anyone. So land belongs. So every piece of land, whether it's a land that belongs to country. So in Ireland, going back to Ireland, how it works is majority of the land belongs to really landowners, private people who own the land. And there's also land that is managed for country by the companies who are like a semi-private companies, like Kilcha, who are, have a mandate to manage the lands for country. So I guess the majority of hunting, as far as I can gather, is done on private land that belongs to people, and especially in the case of Sika deer, which is introduced species and is often considered invasive species. In general, farmers want to get rid of them. So usually when you contact farmer and, to legally hunt, to get the permission and license for hunting deer, you need to have a permission from the landowner, that has at least 100 acres. And then, you essentially putting application for your deer hunting license, along with the permission from the landowner. And based on that, you're getting your license, and then you can go to that essentially that land and shoot the deer within a season. There's obviously season that runs from September till the end of October. It's a season for stags. Then from November till the end of the year, you can shoot both stags and hinds. And then from starting of the new year and from 1st of January till the end of February, you can only shoot hinds and not stags. So within that seasons, then you can go to the land where the landowner give you permission to hunt, and if you're lucky, you can get a deer.
Gotcha. And is it a draw? Is it a lottery, or is it just like over the?
No. There's no tag system. You see, this is one of the.
Okay.
This is another, but I think it's interesting to say because. We really don't know how many deers are in Ireland.
I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, there was no census done for many years. And this is a little bit, something that is really makes me not comfortable, because even if you're going to your hunter certification exam, and the first thing they say, like, here are the techniques of assessing the population of the deer on a given land, and this is what you do, and only when you know what's the population, you're planning your call, right? Because I suppose everything here goes in the terms of call. But then again, we don't know how many deer are they, right? And then the next thing they're saying, like, there's more and more hunters. So the hunters recruitment is like every year there's more hunters in Ireland than the previous year, which I suppose is the kind of reverse trend. It's what's happening in America, where there's less and less hunters every year. So that we have more hunters every year. We don't know how many deer we have. And yet that course, when you're ending at the course, is like, you need to call more hinds because this is how you're controlling population. It's like, but something in me says like, wait a second, we don't know. Is it like more deer, or we know about those deer that they're expanding? They're showing that in the places where they weren't before, was no deer before, so they're expanding their range. But we actually don't know whether it's more of them, and that's why they're expanding the range, or they just, getting scattered and reacting to pressure from hunting or agriculture. We don't know. So it's a little bit like you essentially getting license and then help yourself, So there's no limit.
Interesting. It's just completely bizarre to me. It's just completely bizarre. Because how do you manage? Well, I suppose. Well, yeah, because, you could literally hunt them out of extinction. It's just like, there's many stories in the U.S. where we come over here and we just slaughter the entire herd or the flock, and then 20 years later we have to reintroduce them and work hard for the next 30 years to bring the herd or the flock back up to, appropriate numbers. How is it that there's just not that many coming to hunt there, or?
Well, I suppose there's, number one, Ireland is quite small country, right? So it's not that many people. Secondly, there's many people who would like to see those deer gone, right? Because they're, by some considered to be invasive species. And, if you go even in the definition of invasive species, what is an invasive species is it's kind of vague, and there's quite controversial. So I guess a lot of people, especially from, kind of rewilding circles, or ones who wants to get a back to native woodland and, rebuild the natural environment how it was. They consider Sika deer as an invasive species. It was reintroduced. It's don't belong here, and probably they would like those deer gone. But like I said, there's no management per se of deer. All we have a license. License is issued for free, so you actually don't have to pay for that license. You just need to have a landowner permission, or you have your own land. And interesting thing is that if you have your own land, then the 100 acres limit doesn't apply to you. So you can have really, parcel of a land size of a post stamp, and, you can get a license to hunt it on your, and that's it. And so the only limitation, the only, kind of management of a deer is the season, where you can shoot, and you can shoot stocks, and you can shoot hinds, and so on and so on. That's the only limitation. Other than that, there's not really management per se. And like I said, I don't think you can realistically talk about management if you don't know how many deer you have, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
exactly. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. I guess I never really thought, Europe we take for granted, I think, how easy it is to hunt here in the United States with the different weapons we can use, and just, when people talk about hunting over in Europe, it just boggles my mind how complicated it can be, and yet, like you said, with no real management of a lot of the species.
Yeah. Well, look, this is a situation like in Ireland, and really through my podcast and talking with other people, I'm trying to figure out a way, just talk to people, and maybe, some deer organization should start pushing, and I would like to see that happening, start pushing even to do the deer census.
Sure.
And just sort of have an idea how many deer are there, what is population distribution, and so on and so forth. That never happened. I would like, as many people, and I'm one of them, I would like to see some sort of a tag system, and maybe not so much to limit the harvest, but actually to know, what's going on and how many. Because right now, when the time to renew a hunting license comes, you get this piece of paper, and on the back of that is like, okay, fill out what did you shoot in the previous season, right? And it's completely like you can put it there whatever you want, right? I suppose if you kind of person who likes bragging, you're gonna put like, oh, I shot like 50 deer, right?
Right.
And now nobody knows whether it's true or not. It's completely voluntary, and so I definitely feel like we could get better in that field.
That's interesting. Do you have big organizations, like we have tons of wildlife and conservation organizations here in the States? Do you have those organizations over in Ireland?
Yes, we do. We do, and I probably get a flag for that, but I think that there's all, I don't see the kind of campaigns by those organizations. So like I said, like in my mind, I'm quite new to hunting. I get into hunting only like 3 or 4 years ago. And that was like the first thing. I said, okay, what is the organization that, does stuff for deer, for the environment, and for a sportsman? And it turns out there's few of them. And they're not necessarily like each other. And, so what they're doing like a training courses or, deer dispatch course or deer shooting course or stuff like that. But, one of these organizations are working actually with local police forces, which in Ireland is called Garda. So they're working with Garda, to tackle wildlife crime, which apparently in some areas is a problem. And again, why it is a problem is because you can sell deer that you shot to game processor, and that carcass enters the market and can be sold as meat, which is again in my like yourself that market hunting was something that caused massive problems in the United States, and one of the founding blocks on conservation systems that right now is in the United States was to ban market hunting. And so with the presence of facility like you can shoot the deer and then you can sell it, automatically that attracts sort of wildlife crime where deer are being poached, shoot at night with lights and hunt with dogs and stuff like that. This is all illegal, and then the carcasses are being sold, and that's just a way of making money. So some deer organizations are trying to tackle that and working with local police forces to at least put the taps on this sort of illegal activity, which is good. But like I said, on my end, I would just love to see the census of a deer and know whether there's more or less or what's happening. I have one other interesting thing that is perhaps worth mention about Sika deer and the issue with hybridization. Because the Sika deer, so maybe how it all started, they were first introduced in 1860 in County Wicklow. And from there, they kind of spread, and the herd grew, and they were, sold to various estates. And especially in the Wicklow Mountains, they start to hybridize with native red deer. Which obviously is a problem because red deer is considered native. So, just to have a clean, pure blood, that's really not good for them to hybridize. And an interesting thing that in County Kerry, the population of Sika deer, so they were introduced into County Kerry, I think in 1865, before hybridization in Wicklow started. So they're like a pure blood Japanese Sika in County Kerry, where there's no hybridization. And by some, the population in Sika in Kerry is considered of international significance, because in a lot of places, these are little deer that are very adaptable, and they're hybridizing with other species of deer, and especially with the red deer, which is a problem. And so in Kerry, we have a population of native red deer and, pure blood Japanese Sika deer, which are not hybridizing, at least very little. And this is an interesting thing. The reason for that is body size. And there was a lot of controversy regarding call of red deer. And I learned quite interesting thing about it, that we have in Killarney in County Kerry, there's a national park, and in that park is way too much red deer. And so obviously there's talk about calling this deer. And obviously you have a pushback from people who are, oh no, you cruel bastards, you cannot call deer, you do this and that and something else. And what's happening is, because there's too much deer, the body size of red deer basically start to get smaller because they don't have enough food resources. Once they start getting smaller, you're running into a risk of hybridization with Sika. So that's, I found it very interesting that for the health of red deer herd, they should be called so they're, can still be good body size deer. And then the hybridization issue is not that much because of a difference in the body size between Sika deer and red deer. But this, like I said, I think it's interesting to know that the County Kerry in Ireland has a probably international population of Sika deer that is of international significance because they're pure blood Japanese Sika.
That's interesting. That's crazy.
Hmm.
Absolutely crazy. Really cool. See, this is why I like having you on here. You are a wealth of information.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah. It's quite interesting, and like I said, it's quite unique. And I guess, in the areas of Ireland where fallow deer is more popular, I guess that's probably the fallow deer is by far the most widespread species of deer in Ireland. And I guess it's also easier to hunt because they're active throughout the day. While Sika is like a crepuscular, so you have just this narrow window of a few hours when they're active. But as since I got into hunting in Ireland, a majority of people are, the main kind of staple target species is Sika deer.
That's cool. Very interesting. I guess, like I said, when most of us in the States, we think of Ireland, we think of St. Patrick's Day and green beer and Guinness and, beautiful landscapes. You don't realize that there's actually hunting opportunities over there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, really yes. Cool. I think that, Ireland is great for outdoors opportunities. And I said that many times on my podcast that, it's really low barrier of entry to do various things. It's a great surfing destination. You have a great waves, and there's a lot of really good surfing here, and the beaches are not crowded. So apparently there's a lot of surfers coming in as a good opportunity for surfing. You have a good opportunity for hunting, Sika deer or perhaps red deer, which is, it's not quite the size of elk, but it's a big deer and quite exciting hunts. You can go golfing for, next to nothing, like in most countries in Europe, for example, if you want to go, golfing, you need to have a really fat wallet. While in Ireland, every second village has a small golf course, and, you can buy a set of used clubs and whatever for €50 and off you go. So, So I think that there's a lot of great opportunities in Ireland to try various, outdoors activities. And even if you're not gonna, you decided this is not your cup of tea, I guess you tried it, and, you don't have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars just to do it. So it's great that way.
That is really cool. Man. See, every time I talk to you now, I want to go visit Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do one of those podcasts, looking into each other's eyes, rather than over the internet.
I know, right?
So
actually meet in person. How crazy would that be?
Exactly. I think it's gonna happen.
Well, very cool, Tommy. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to come on the show to talk about this very interesting hunting topic.
My pleasure.
Remind the listeners again where they can find you and where they can listen to your podcast.
Right. So my website is tommysoutdoors.com. Or just Google Tommy's 'S Outdoors. And it's a podcast that is available on all podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and what have you. We also have a YouTube channel, Tommy's Outdoors. And I also post regular blogs on the website. So around the wildlife and conservation and hunting and fishing and stuff like that. So visit tommysoutdoors.com and subscribe to the podcast on any platform of your choice. And obviously on Twitter @OutdoorsPodcast and on Instagram @Tommy'sOutdoors. Subscribe, follow, like, the drill.
Yes, indeed. All right, Tommy. Again, thank you so much for coming on the show, and I will get this posted up soon.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that'll do it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you're listening via Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeart, or whatever podcast player you use, because you can subscribe to my show. I encourage you to keep up with me on social media. You can always go to facebook.com/HuntFishTravel or to twitter.com/HuntFishTravel. I have not ported over my Instagram yet, so it's still instagram.com/CarrieZylka, CarrieZylka, because some jackass already stole HuntFishTravel. So, I look forward to some really great episodes coming up. I know I've been slacking the last year or so, but life changes. Divorce, new house, new job, pandemic, little things in life. But I've got some really great episodes coming up, so I encourage you to go and subscribe to the podcast. You can always go to huntfishtravel.com and sign up for the newsletter there. I have a ridiculous amount of giveaways that I need to sort out and start sending out this summer, fall, and winter. So be sure to sign up to the newsletter, because that's the only way that you can qualify for some of the swag. We've got broadheads, we've got arrows, we've got decoys, we've got trail cameras, we've got all sorts of really interesting stuff. So again, go to huntfishtravel.com and sign up for the newsletter there. Like, follow, engage. If you have ideas for episodes, please feel free to reach out to me on any of these social media platforms, or you can reach me through the contact page on huntfishtravel.com. Thanks.